Hey, true believers, Chris Mack coming at you today with the Alpha Flight Special Issue 1. This is from April of 1992, but the cover date says June. It's just, comics. But what drives me nuts here is I remember when I was a kid, probably about, I want to say 9-ish, I was at a garage sale in my neighborhood, and a dude was selling his comic book collection, and I bought this. I think it was for either $1 or 50 cents out of his long box. And I never really gave any thought to it because at the time I was just getting into X-Men, knew more about Batman, had no idea who Alpha Flight was. I only bought it because Wolverine was on the cover. I had no idea that Wolverine was part of Department H at this point in history. Years later, sold it, and I was like, damn it. But thankfully I got it back, but yeah. Memories. If you haven't read this book, it is a treat. I'm not 100% sure if this was like Marvel's way of trying to give Alpha Flight some, backstory, and how, they evolved to what would eventually be Alpha Flight or not. Either way, it's just something fun to have. So let's talk about who made First Flight. This was Scott Liddell doing the plot. Scott Liddell and Simon Furman doing the script, Pat Broderick pencil, Bruce Patterson inks, Janice Chiang doing the lettering, Bob Sharan colorist, Rob Takar was the editor, and Tom DeFalco was the editor-in-chief. And so we're introduced to this character named, give me a minute, Sean Bernard, and he was part of the Canadian police force. And what happens here at the beginning is one of his partners, I guess, wants to kill him because he's a dirty cop. He's selling drugs. Sean took him to internal affairs. He's like, you couldn't let it go, Sean. You had to take it to internal affairs. Well, look at that. Gave me the answer right there. But then what's just brutal is all of a sudden, snap. You're like, holy crap. And just, he goes, what did you say right here? The difference being I'm a cop who knows how to use the system. And then we just see this hand come out of nowhere. A dead one? And here, Logan. And remember, Logan's a lot more violent at this point because this is when he was part of the Department H. He hadn't been under the tutelage of Charles Xavier yet, or any of the characters like Rogue or Kitty or Jubilee that he's taken under his wing that kind of softened him up and helped him more to his human side. So here he's a little more gruff. And Sean's just like, who are you? I'm your new best friend, bub. So here Sean is kind of given the option of either joining the government or going to jail. Those are his two options because they can't really sweep the attack on the other officer under the rug. But before that, we get into our villain, and this is where we are introduced. This isn't a first appearance. He's been around for a while, but this is the first time I've ever seen this character named Egghead. And it's just interesting how he's just, sir. Sir sounds so formal. As we'll be working together for a while. I'd hope you'd all feel comfortable calling me Egghead. Lord High Exalted Master of all, if you must. So we kind of just see the ego maniac that is this villain, kind of sets it up. And I mean, look at this. Look at the artwork. They didn't have to go this hard. I'm not saying it's like the greatest piece of artwork you've ever seen, but it's just very dynamic and very nice looking. The colors pop, and it's just the shadows there. You get that look. That is the villain. And here, we were just talking about with Sean becoming part of the government. And I love how Logan goes, correction, Bernard. Now that the Prime Minister has dotted his I's and crossed his T's, you belong to the Canadian government. Unless you want to go straight to the Hosgow and light of your recent run-in with the law. And then here we're kind of brought into the third person of Sean. And Logan is just not telling him nothing. They just drop him off at this camp, and he just does not know what to do. He walks into his bunk, and then there's this guy. I don't know how I'd do with a roommate who does any type of calculations in his head. He's like, bring down the 6 divided by square root 6 of pi multiplied by variable distance between Venus and Centauri cluster. Bleh, bleh. Just let me sleep, man. But we'll talk more about Alex Thorne in a minute. Here, the one Alpha Flight member that we will be aware of here is Nara. I can talk, I promise, but just not enough coffee yet. Or as most of you would probably know her as, Snowbird. And he's like, finally, someone who can answer my questions. Please, Miss Nara. Ms. Nara, can you tell me where, just Nara, and you are Detective Sean Bernard. Where is it? She goes, welcome to the flight. And everyone's just being very aloof about what's going on until, of course, we hit an ad. And then we get segued back into the villains, which the the banter between the villains is actually really fun. You kind of see that they hate each other, but they're all trying to kind of get along. It's weird, but it's fun at the same time. And with that, we're introduced to Saint Elmo. And my God, this guy to a degree reminds me of Hercules from the Avengers. And Sean says, asleep or awake. Any good cop knows when someone's breathing down his neck. Huh? Good morning, mortal. You are in the presence of Saint Elmo, keeper of the Northern Lights. And then Sean, just not taking any flag, goes, I had you figured for Kris Kringle. Ha! A sense of humor. Few are the mere mortals with the strength of mind to maintain their wits in the presence of the Arctic Avatar. And he's just like, someone help me? And here we see Alex Thorne. He's like, what just happened? It's called transillumination. Saint Elmo possesses the ability to temporarily transform solid objects into light. He enjoys disorienting us mere mortals. So organically, I like how the plotters here organically introduce us to each character and their, mannerisms. I knew I was going to have that word. And again, we start seeing it here. I'm excited. Sorry, I love this book. But Sean's just like, wait a minute. I didn't recognize you when I was asleep, but you're the Alex Thorne, the smartest man in Canada. Hardly an achievement. In truth, I'm the smartest man in the world. It's just that Reed Richards gets all the press while I'm stuck here. And then before he could say anything, Logan interrupts him. You had to get him started, Bernard. Really, Logan? The bathroom? Have you no sense of privacy? Privacy's for civilians, Thorne. So here, Alec Thorne kind of reminds me of C-3PO. He just kind of has that attitude about him. And then here, what's cool is we get a little, moment with, what's his name? Walter Langowski. Langowski, I think is how you pronounce it. If that name sounds familiar, it's Sasquatch. So they're kind of bringing Bernard out, introducing him to everything, and this is where Sasquatch, his name is so hard to pronounce, so we're just going to go Sasquatch, introduces him to James Hudson, as we all know him as Guardian, but at this point he's not. He's just trying to put together the superhero team. He goes, Detective Bernard, welcome to history. So they're telling him how some superheroes are made, or not made, but they're born with their powers and whatnot. He goes, others are made. And he goes, and then what I like here is how they say others were born, other heroes were made. Others, like you, Bernard, are drafted. And this is where we're first introduced to the, prototype of the exosuit that would eventually be what Vindicator wears when he creates Alpha Flight. So it's just really neat. In the artwork, again, they did not need to go this hard for a book like this, but look at all the details they put into the metal here, the coloring, the wiring, just excellent work. And then we find out the machinations of what Egghead eventually wants to do, and it actually really begins to make the villains question if they really want to take on this job. Now, speaking of which, real quick, on a little anecdote here, at the time of this recording, they were just announcing the release of an Egghead Marvel Legends figure, and he's up for pre-sale. I just got him on Amazon, so make sure to get him just because he is so ridiculously evil that you have to have him. And then look at the artwork here. Great work as Bernard, who I hate his superhero name. They call him Gopher because the exosuit can burrow. And I'm like, really? And then Alec. I'm a little embarrassed to admit that his superhero name took longer to get than I thought. So his name's Alec Thorne. That's his real name. But they say Smart Alec. And I was reading it in my brain. I kept seeing Smart Alex, but it's not with an X. It's with a C. So his name is Smart Alec. Yeah, that took longer than it should have. But anyway, that aside, Smart Alec, Gopher, and Snowbird are going up against St. Elmo. And guys, they poop the bed. And it takes Logan having to jump in to save Nara, because when she's in her owl form, she's sort of like Wolverine, where she wants to give in to the beast, but she tries to hang on to her humanity. And so here, I like how Sean's noticing all this. He goes, before my mind had even registered that he leapt off the fence, Logan was already in the middle of the fray. He separated the combatants without hurting anyone. And this shows why Wolverine was chosen to be the leader of Alpha Flight, or the flight at this point. Now, I don't want to give everything away because it's a great little moment, but then Mac, as Logan always would call him, they kind of start to butt heads about another member of the flight that no one has seen yet. And this is where the book starts to feel a little jarring for me, because all of a sudden we're starting to meet all these other characters, and then mid-book there's another character that comes in. Her name's Jody. And he goes, Jody's my responsibility, and I feel involvement in the team may be her best chance at a normal life. Jamie, the girl's a basket case. Funny, Logan. That's what they told me after Heather and I found you roaming the Canadian countryside, more animal than man. I didn't give up on you. I don't expect you to give up on her. Cheap shot, Hudson. So here, even though they're button heads, you see that their relationship runs deeper, and it actually shows it, and this connects to what Barry Windsor Smith showed in Marvel Presents Weapon X, where at the end of it, Logan takes off into the wilderness to get away from the Weapon X project. And so here we see who saved him and kind of at least brought him back to a point of being able to live, even though he doesn't have his memories. So that was a great little tie-in. Now, real quick, the one thing I forgot, I wanted to point this out and I didn't. Back here when the practice battles are happening, Hudson and Logan are talking. He goes, this would be so much easier if we had the budget for a giant room filled with mock dangers. Right. You can call it the danger room. Keep dreaming, kid. Wah, wah. It's funny, and of course it's a little Easter egg for fans, but it felt a little too forced. Anyway, that said, we're introduced to Stitch. And she has the mutant ability to control small pieces of metal, so she's kind of like a mini Magneto. I like that name. See it 3 times fast. Mini Magneto! But she has this thing where she's terrified of her power, and so it almost paralyzes her. And the way that she warms up to Sean, it feels a little rushed, because at this point we're almost done with the book, and I feel like they just introduced her a little too late for her character to be developed. Now, with that said, more Egghead. I don't know, he's just fun. Like, the way they made him evil was almost like Dr. Evil level. So he goes, good morning, America, or more specifically the United States. I, Egghead, have constructed a nuclear missile. From my vantage point on the fringe of the Canadian border, my comrades and I intend to launch the warhead into the very heart of New York City. Only the President of the United States can avert this national tragedy by abdicating his role as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. To me, he has 1 hour to decide. And it's just, I think it was from So I Married Axe Murder, or it might have been Austin Powers, where they said, so delightfully evil. It's just great stuff. So here, even though the team is green, they have to, the flight has to do something about it. And so Logan, you finally see him don his yellow uniform. He goes, if this is your, Max talking about how, we're the Great White North's best kept secret. there's no way that they would have known who the Alpha Flight is, which means we have the much needed advantage of surprise. Frankly, I'm not okay with sending you guys in. Y'all could really use a little more training. And Logan just goes, is this your inspirational speech, coach? Save it for the eulogy. We got a job to do, and we're gonna do it. And I just love, again, how this is Logan pre-X-Men. So even though he has the feeling of who Wolverine is, you can see how he's a little more gruff, and his moral compass isn't exactly what it should be. Now here, great piece of artwork as the team flies in. And it's just so random to see Rhino there. It's like, what the frickin', jeez. Seems like every time you turn around, there's another set of Boy Scouts that crawls around the blasted woodwork. And this is one of the first times Wolverine and Rhino go into each other. And again, you can see how Logan is a lot more ferocious because he just goes straight down his chest. And look at his face. He cut me. Quit whining Rhino and do something useful. And as the fight goes on, we get a cool moment with Stitch, but again, not enough character development. I wish that there was more with her. And there's actually a great moment that shows how green they are, with smart Alec thinking he knows everything, which he doesn't. And it's a great moment to show what happens. Same with St. Elmo. Even though he's supposed to be like this godlike character, he actually gets dazed. Now, with all that said, we get a ticking clock at the end. And it said, and Wolverine's just thinking, if you don't think I'm going to kill you, think again. And it says a berserker fury builds. And it actually takes Snowbird talking Logan down, saying, we need the man, not the animal. Now, as everything comes to a climactic ending, there's actually a very sweet moment with St. Elmo, and I wish that we would have gotten more time with this character because you warm up to him. It's just absolutely great. And again, the artwork. I mean, look at this. Great line work right there for this explosion. Absolutely great work. And now we get a moment where Shaman and Hudson butt heads, and then there's a boiling point with Sean as the book comes to the end. I don't want to give it away, guys. I want you all to go get this book. Again, it's not one of those like ultimate events of this year or the first appearance of this character. It's none of that. It's a fun read, and if you're a fan of Alpha Flight like I am, it's just nice to get some more backstory into how James Hudson created the team. There's even a moment when him and Sean are arguing, and he's like, you threw us in the deep end. He's like, you're right. I had to make that call, though. Maybe in the future we should do some sort of, he says like scale of people training. We should do like an A flight, a B flight, a C flight, which would become like Alpha Flight, Beta Flight, Gamma Flight, which that's where Puck, and I think it was Wild Child came from and moved up the ranks to Alpha Flight. So anyway, that said, if you've enjoyed what you've seen, please first and foremost support your local comic shop, get a copy, or wherever you like to get your books. And if you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate if you take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that fancy little flight bell next to subscribe, that way we continue to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel, and we love talking with y'all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below or our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, thank you so much for stopping by. Hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.